All right, so topic of the day is 10 to 12 day JMT resupply logistics. One of the great advantages of doing the JMT in 10 to 12 days is that you can really simplify your logistics. You don't need any of the more complex resupplies. The extra time that they take isn't worth it if you're only going to be out there for 10 to 12 days. Something else I'm going to cover is actually batteries. Many people don't think of batteries as something that is important for resupplies. If you're talking about using a rechargeable battery pack like this, it ends up being very important if you're trying to move quickly. So if you're going to use one of these things on the trail and you don't want to carry a giant thing that'll last you the whole trip, you're going to need to be able to charge it as quickly as possible. Your main resupply points, if you're going to do the JMT in 10 to 12 days, will be your choice of Cathedral Lakes Trailhead or the Tuolumne Meadows store, for one. Your choice there is going to depend on which direction you're going. I usually find it fine to use Cathedral Lakes Trailhead if I'm moving south, but if I were going north, due to the longer amount of time that my stuff would be sitting there, I would ship it to the Tuolumne Meadows store for pickup when I get there, if I wanted to use that resupply. Next resupply is Reds Meadow, and I mean just the store. I would either ship it or drop it off at the store. Both are options. I would not try to leave it in one of the trailhead bear boxes. Regardless of which direction, it's going to be at least 3 days before you get there. This is a really high traffic area, and they often have issues with bear box capacity. So if I was going to leave stuff in a bear box, I wouldn't do it in Reds Meadow. It's just, I don't like to leave things in a bear box for more than a couple days, and you have a better option in the Reds Meadow store. I think they charge like $5 a day if you drop it off by hand, and they're basically the going rate if you mail it in. If you're going to do the JMT fast and you want someplace to grab food and take a shower, I'd make sure that your timing works out with the Reds Meadow store, because that's basically going to be your only option. The third and final resupply that we're going to go into detail about is Muir Trail Ranch. Muir Trail Ranch is the one stop that isn't optional. You could do the whole thing just resupplying at Muir Trail Ranch. You just have to carry a little more food for the section from there to Happy Isles, or from Happy Isles to there, depending on which way you're going. Muir Trail Ranch is a couple miles off the trail, but it is not optional. You're going to need to stop there unless you're going to carry all of your food for essentially the entire trip on your back in one go. I don't suggest that. It'll make your trip a lot less pleasant, and the $80 or whatever it is that it costs at this point is pretty minimal compared to all of the rest of the costs that will go into doing the John Muir Trail. I'd say that it's worthwhile to make sure that you've got that resupply point nailed down. The two resupplies that you aren't going to use are Kearsarge and VVR. The reason why these aren't really an option for a 10 to 12 day JMT is that they require going too far off trail to get there. I think Kearsarge is about 7.5 miles or 15 miles total. VVR is about 6.3 miles or 12.5 miles total. Either case, I consider that too far off trail. You're going to basically lose at least a half a day depending on your pace, and that isn't counting the amount of time that you spend resupplying. And since you can fit all of the food that you really need into a Bear Vault 500 at least for that distance, I would say just leave them off the table and keep your logistics simple. So let's talk about some of the big challenges about resupply for something this fast. First off, timing is a lot more important. You can't afford to lose a day because you were an hour late to your resupply. You need to plan to be there at least 2 to 3 hours before they close so that you've got time to work through all of your food and get it all packed the way you want it, as well as give your battery time. You'll probably want to talk to people while you're there. It's a good opportunity to get information about the trail sections coming up. For this reason, I've usually planned on camping somewhere relatively close to Muir Trail Ranch. Usually it's about a mile or two outside. I've stayed as close as a half a mile from there. I wouldn't go any closer than that just to try and be respectful. The same sort of challenge can apply to Reds Meadow as well. At Reds Meadow, there's a campground that's very close that is managed by Reds Meadow. It'll cost you some amount of money to use it. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I think the site itself is like $20, but then they split it by however many people are staying in the spot. So the amount that you need varies, but as long as you have $20 in smaller bills, you're going to be okay. For Reds Meadow, if you aren't going to stay in the associated campground, you're going to have to stay outside of Devil's Post Pile. Staying outside of Devil's Post Pile isn't too hard on the north end. The boundary is very clearly marked. If you are north of Minaret Creek, you're well in the clear. The south end is a little bit more fuzzy. You're kind of in the Reds Meadow area, and I don't know the exact boundaries for the Reds Meadow store. If I were staying somewhere on the southern end, over by the Boundary Creek, that's not a great area. It's very rocky and kind of on a slope. I would actually stay up the hill, sort of by Red Cones, or maybe even Upper Crater Meadow, just so you have the lay of the land, what your options are staying around there. Down at the other end by Muir Trail Ranch, I wouldn't plan on camping anywhere in here. It's very steep. So as far as camping goes around MTR, plan on being somewhere either on this section after or being up closer to Sally Keys. By Senger Creek here, there is this kind of meadowy area in here. In a really heavy snow year, I've gone through there and had it be flooded. Be aware that there's some risk of that. I've seen a variety of camping options in this section, and that's where I would stay on the north end. I'm not going to go into it too much here, but you might have noticed that I've got some areas highlighted orange on my map, and those are just areas where you're not allowed to camp. I might do a video going into those. I kind of feel like it might be obvious since you see all the regulations, but it also might be nice to have it in one place. So if you think that it would be great to have that laid out for you in one video, just leave it in the comments and I'll try to put something together. Anyway, I was in the middle of the big challenges. So the second big challenge is actually also timing. Not only do you need to be there to pick up your resupply on time, you need to send it on time. This is something that can cause a lot of problems for you if you're someone who's a little bit forgetful. Don't even mess with it. Your food's gonna be shelf stable, so I would try to send it out at least 3 weeks and possibly even 4 weeks before you plan to be there. This gives a ton of time to make sure that your resupply shows up, and you don't have time to wait another day to see if your resupply will get there. Furthermore, a lot of the hiker boxes aren't there these days because of COVID-19. Depending on what goes on with the vaccine, maybe that's not going to be an issue in the next year or two, but it's something to be aware of if you're going there in 2021. The last thing I wanted to hit on is battery packs. Unless you're going to take one giant battery pack that's going to last you for the entire trip, you're going to need to think about how fast your battery pack is going to charge. If you're going for 10 to 12 days, most people aren't going to have an entire day where they can sit and let their battery pack charge. On that note, a little charger like this, even though the ultralight people like me tend to appreciate the small compact package, just ain't gonna cut it. You're gonna need something like one of these. You're gonna want at least 2 ports so you can charge your phone and your battery pack at the same time. If you've got more accessories, you might need more ports than that. Second, you need to think about the amperage draw. This is starting to get into stuff that most people don't want to think about with their electronics. Some chargers just don't have the gas to charge a phone at full speed and a battery pack at full speed. This one I think has Qualcomm Quick Charge on both ports. At very least it has the Anchor high-speed charging on both ports. The way that works is that USB is a standardized thing. It only allows a certain amount of amperage to go through it while using the normal USB standard. If you use something with some sort of quick charge capability, what it does is it talks to your phone or battery pack and says, hey, are you this thing that can take more power? And if it says, yeah, I can take more power, then it'll actually feed more power through and charge your battery pack a lot faster. If you were to look at both of these combinations, you might think that this one's larger and it holds more power. Don't worry about the size as much. These actually hold a similar amount of power. And honestly, don't worry too much about the weight. This one has a metal jacket. It weighs a little bit more than this guy, but it charges faster. I can get about twice as much juice in this in a 3-hour stop than I can into this. That equates to roughly half a charge, and since I'm usually about 2/3 of the way through the pack and my phone, this is a 1050 milliamp battery. If it's your first JMT, you might want to have a little bit more juice than that because you're going to want to take a lot of video and you're going to want to take a bunch of pictures. But the big picture is that you want to be able to charge whatever it is that you have as fast as possible and charge your phone at the same time. That's going to be twice as much juice going into your devices. You're going to basically collect more electrons in the time that you're in camp. I wouldn't plan on having more than one charger plug in at a time because there just aren't that many ports available in the resupply spots. You need to recognize that there are going to be some limitations there. If you were trying to shoot a movie or something and you needed to charge a lot of equipment and batteries all at once, I would actually bring a power strip, plan on plugging that in, and then having all of my stuff in that power strip. It's going to be a lot of extra weight, but if your goal is to, shoot the next big movie on the John Muir Trail, that's the way to charge your gear while being considerate. Please be considerate. Other people need to charge the gear too, so unless you're going to do something like that, stick to one charger. Along those lines, some people will say, why don't I use one of those solar panels? This is the solar panel that I bought to try out. What I found is that it was too much weight for the amount of battery that I would get from it. I would have actually been better served to have a battery pack twice as big than to try and charge the battery pack that I have with this guy. I'm not saying that it can't work or that technology hasn't gotten better since this thing came out. I'm just saying that this guy ain't gonna cut it. If you're thinking about trying to charge your phone or a camera or batteries or anything off of a solar panel, I would say at least get something better than the Nomad 7 from Goal Zero. This guy was no bueno. Anyway, just to recap batteries, you want to have the maximum volt amps input into this guy, as well as the maximum volt amps output for each of the ports. Usually they'll list that somewhere in the details on the charger. So if you've got a couple of them, you can look through what you have, and otherwise go diving in Amazon. This stuff changes so often that I don't think that I could suggest any particular item. I know that I've had a decent amount of luck with items from Anker, which is a pretty common brand. And then this charger is from Aki. It sounds basically the same. It seems to be basically the same. Just make sure you're getting something with a reasonable number of reviews, and get it because it works and has the capacity you need, not because it looks cute. You want something that works. And that pretty much wraps up the resupply for a 10 to 12 day JMT. Now to wrap up everything overall, when I've hiked the JMT, I've always gone southbound, and I have resupplied most of my food and everything at Cathedral Lakes. I haven't resupplied at Reds Meadow, but I've always stopped to get a burger. And then I resupply at MTR. This formula has worked great for me and has kept things very simple. I think if I were going to do it again, I might do a resupply at Reds Meadow as well, just because it's simple and cheap. And if you can avoid carrying an extra couple days of food, it just makes your life a little bit more fun. And who isn't out there to have fun? Come on. If you do something like that and you have a quick charging dual port battery pack set up where you can charge your phone and your battery pack at the same time, that's going to be your best deal for resupply, especially if you're trying to go fast. I've always done it this way. I think it's great. I might even be doing it again this year, fingers crossed. If you hear someone annoying out there with ugly hands and a weird watch, it's probably me, but don't worry about it. I'm just going to be more annoying in person. Anyway, hope your hike goes great. Hope that you got something out of this. Please let me know if this was useful in the comments. Also, like and subscribe. Look for me on the Facebook JMT group. I talk on there often, and I'm happy to try and put stuff together if it seems like enough people are interested in a subject. So I'll see you there, I'll see you on trail, and I'll catch you on the next one. Later.